The investigation into the sudden and freak sinking of the Superyacht Bayesian has made world headlines this week. The captain and crew are being investigated in what's sure to be major headlines in the marine world for weeks to come. Here's what we know, what we don't, and what we sailors should pay attention to. First, the vessel, delivered in 2008 by Perini Navi, the 55.9 meter or 183 foot sailing yacht Bayesian has a beam of 11.51 meters or 38 feet wide and a draft of 9.73 meters over 30 feet deep. Previously named Salute, Bayesian has an internal volume of 473 gross tons and once boasted the tallest aluminum mast in the world at 75 meters or 246 feet. Of the 10 yachts built on this design, Bayesian was the only single mast sloop. All the others had multiple masts, so Bayesian had the tallest mast and added ballast to support that rig. The almost 250 feet of mast and 200,000 pounds of ballast. Naval architect Bill Prince on Power and Motor Yacht explained that a typical 50-foot racing sailboat will have an angle of vanishing stability of about 130 degrees. The forces of the wind and water and waves can bring that boat beyond 90 degrees, so the tip of the mast is 30 feet underwater, and the boat will have enough righting energy to return upright. The Bayesian, being of much less ballast to weight ratio, has an angle of vanishing stability of just 88 degrees, and that's with the keel down. As we know from accident reports, the keel was not down. The Bayesian had a swing keel that was only required to be down while she was under sail or 60 nautical miles offshore. As she was anchored, the keel was in the up and stowed position. There was testimony from the crew that said the keel made noise while in the down position at anchor, and since it was not required to be down, it was kept up and stowed. Anybody with a swing keel knows that noise. It's important to note that this keel was ballasted at 90,000 pounds. It wasn't just a blade. It was 30 feet long and 90,000 pounds. It had weight added to it, so in the down position, it greatly improved the stability of the vessel. In the up position, stability was reduced because that 90,000 pounds would have been much higher in the hull. While down, the angle of vanishing stability of the vessel's ability to right herself after a knockdown was 88 degrees, but in the up position, the angle she'd right herself at was reduced to 77 degrees. From the stability information book that the manufacturer sent with the vessel, another number is important, the down flooding angle. This is the angle at which the boat will start taking on water through its many open ports. As the vessel was at anchor, the air conditioning running, the HVAC ports would have all been open, her generators running and their exhaust and intake ports open, ventilation ports, and of course companionway doors. Many have testified that the giant sliding glass doors are the main entry to the interior of the vessel, and at a heel, they would slide open under their own weight. Locking pins were to be installed while the vessel sailed. As these pocket doors are so heavy, they would just open as soon as the boat heeled. Those pins would not have been installed at anchor, for they would effectively lock the guests inside. The down flooding angle reported from the manufacturer when the ship would take on water is just 45 degrees. So in theory, if you could grab the mast and tip the boat over to 46 degrees while she was at anchor with all her ports open, she would eventually sink from water ingress. How long that would take is anyone's guess. There's also the down flooding of the aft cockpit. The cockpit on Bayesian is a large tub that would fill with water readily if the ship was heeled beyond 45 degrees. And with the large sliding doors open, water would immediately enter the interior of the boat. That's everything we know about the vessel itself. What happened is a freak and unavoidable and extremely rare weather event. Some called it a sudden tornado or a waterspout, while others called it a sudden downburst, known to knock airplanes right out of the sky. We have footage from local cameras of one of these weather events hitting a harbor, and watch carefully as a 50-foot catamaran is flipped over end for end. I'll play that again slowly, and also notice the 140-foot sailing vessel on the right of frame being hit by the downburst and laying over to almost 90 degrees before righting herself. These sort of weather events are horrifying and unpredictable. As someone who's lived on a boat for several years myself, we know that finding a protected anchorage is a critical part of sailing life. But even in the Bayesian's protected anchorage, safety is a relative term. A freak weather event like this leaves no one safe. Bayesian sank shortly before daybreak on 19 August during a storm when anchored off Porticello, a small fishing village about 9 miles east of Palermo, Sicily. Data from the tracking of the AIS system showed that at 0350 Bayesian was already struggling against the storm or downburst, and the Italian prosecutor later specified and began to drag her anchor. At 0400, the yacht was entirely underwater. A few seconds later, its emergency position indicating radio beacon, or EPIRB as we know them, became detached from the top of the mast and automatically raised the alarm, which was picked up by a satellite station managed by the Barry Coast Guard. The yacht sank rapidly to a depth of 49 meters, or about 160 feet. The yacht had been carrying 10 crew and 12 passengers. The 15 survivors were rescued from the inflatable life raft by a nearby vessel, Sir Robert Baden-Powell, a smaller Dutch schooner built in 1957. One body was recovered from the sea while 6 people remained missing. Divers from the fire brigade immediately began searching the wreck. The task was challenging on account of the depth, which limited divers to just 8 minutes to work on the wreck before they had to come back to the surface. They also found access to the cabins was blocked by furniture. 6 bodies were recovered eventually from the interior of the yacht on 21, 22, and 23 August. The yacht was lying on her right side on the seafloor, and the bodies of the passengers were found in cabins on the left side, where investigators suggested they had been taking refuge. In the immediate aftermath of the sinking, there was media speculation about how Bayesian could have sunk so quickly, especially as a nearby yacht was undamaged in the storm. Although early eyewitness accounts led to reports that the yacht had been hit by a waterspout, the Italian authorities said a downburst was much more likely. Commentators, while acknowledging that the weather was probably not the only factor in the sinking, said that the record-high sea surface temperatures around Sicily at the time could have increased the intensity of storms in the area. Bad weather had been forecast, and local fishermen had decided to keep their boats in port, but there had been no warning of an extreme weather event. There were conflicting opinions about whether the exceptional height of the mast made the yacht more vulnerable to capsizing in extreme winds. Additionally, the wind may have caused the anchor to drag, leading to a collision with rocks, or heeling may have exceeded its downflooding angle, causing water to enter the ventilation ducts. Giovanni Constantino, chief executive officer of the Italian Sea Group, which now owns Perini Navi, the people who built the boat, defended the design of the yacht, describing it as unsinkable. We know nothing's unsinkable. And he suggested that the crew may have been at fault. He said the crew should, in the face of an approaching storm, have shut all the doors and hatches, turned on the engines, lowered the retractable keel, and faced the wind. While some experts share his opinion, others thought that the sinking had been caused by the freak weather conditions, which the crew could not have foreseen. The Seafarers Union, Nautilus International, cautioned against blaming the crew because the full facts aren't known yet, saying it was not only unfair but also harmful to the process of uncovering the truth and learning all the reasons for the tragedy. The chief prosecutor initiated a judicial investigation into the sinking. On 26 August, the captain of the yacht was placed under investigation. That does not mean formal charges will necessarily follow. If they did, they could include manslaughter and shipwreck. The captain declined to answer the prosecutor's questions. On 28 August, 2 British crew members were also put under investigation. As Bayesian was a UK registered vessel, the Marine Accident Investigation Branch also opened an investigation into the causes of the sinking and sent a team of 4 inspectors to Italy. Curtosio said that there were plans to salvage Bayesian. Under Italian law, the owner is responsible for the cost of salvage, and the yacht would then be handed to the investigating authorities. At the time of this filming, we don't know the full cause of her extremely fast sinking, her very unlikely sinking. It seems likely that a number of factors are at play. The tall mast, the raised 90,000-pound keel, the door that opens by itself, the down-flooding angle of 45 degrees with the ports open, which they would have been at anchor, the unpredictable and freak weather event, the large tub cockpit susceptible to flooding. It all adds up to disaster, and the lesson here for us sailors is kind of twofold. First, we can't predict the weather. Being a conservative captain myself, I make decisions to stay put in some conditions that others will go make passage in. Making conservative decisions and avoiding conditions that don't suit our boats is a big step towards safety. I've seen far too many people getting into trouble when they didn't have to. Crossing the Gulf Stream is a great example. Heading out when there's been any northerly component to the wind in the last 48 hours is a big no for me. And second, we plan for protected anchorage the best we can and buy the biggest anchor and chains that our boats will allow us to fit. And 99% of the time, that's enough. But the 1% is what we can't plan for, what no amount of anchor or bilge pump will solve. Despite all our planning and contingencies, we need a good plan to ditch. A ditch bag, a life raft that deploys when submerged, and an EPIRB. I once rode out the tail end of a hurricane on 2 anchors, and everyone told me to go stay in a hotel, secure the boat to the best of my ability, and leave her. I didn't heed that advice, and I stayed aboard, and it was a horrible experience, and kind of all for nothing, because had the worst had happened, there was nothing I could have done to save the boat anyway. The engine would not have been powerful enough to combat the wind if the anchor did let go, and I couldn't see more than about 5 feet in the rain to drive, even if I could. What do you take from all this disaster? What can we learn from it to make our boats safer? I can't wait to see what you have to say in the comments.